Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Brenda Dettinger from BioPack, and I'll be your moderator on today's webinar. BSL Home, what's in the box and what students will learn. Today, we will show you all the components inside the BSL Home box, and we'll go through the lessons in detail so you and your students know what to expect. I'm excited to introduce Jasmine Anderson. Jasmine is the BioPack Student Lab Product Manager. She previously served as the Midwest Regional Account Manager and has a lot of great BioPack experience. Prior to joining BioPack Systems, Jasmine taught undergraduate laboratory courses and received training in active learning strategies for STEM. Today, she works on educational solutions that engage and excite students while streamlining the teaching process. Welcome, Jasmine.
Hello, thank you, Brenda.
All right, Jasmine, and I'm making you the presenter. There you go.
All right, great. Switching my screen now.
Yep, everything looks great.
Okay, hello. So before we get started, I'd like to provide some background information for those of you who are not yet familiar with us. BioPack Systems is a proven leader in research and teaching solutions for physiology. We've been in business for 27 years now, and 99% of the top 100 universities use BioPack products. With researchers around the world, you can also find over 36,000 citations stating BioPack systems. And our teaching line, the BioPack Student Lab, has also been repeatedly ranked first in its class by HAPS for physiology experiments. So since the beginning, the vision for BioPack Student Lab was to create educational solutions that engage, excite, are easily customizable, and streamline the learning process. In the past, we did this with our systems that some of you might be familiar with that encourage cooperative learning, and students would often work around them in groups. One person would be the recorder, another student would be the subject, and they would all have different roles. Well, then COVID-19 happened this spring, and we know that turned many labs for our educators upside down. So in an effort to help, we knew that we needed to once again streamline the learning process, and that's whether students are physically distancing, working remote, or whatever hybrid approach. And that's where BSL Home was born. So it's our easiest to use system that students can use independently. They can use remotely, physically distancing, virtually anywhere. So today we have a lot on the agenda to cover about BSL Home. The first thing I'd like to discuss is what's in the box. So what do you get in your BSL Home Kit when you receive it? Then we'll discuss how to install BSL Home by running this short video that outlines the quick steps. And then we'll go over the 9 different lessons that are included with the kit and a brief description on each one. I'd also like to run through a lesson with all of you today, just like a student would. And the lesson I'd like to run with you all is our ECG lesson, which is probably our most popular lesson. And almost one lab will do it at one time or another. We can also go over how to analyze your BSL Home data, the ways to share it, cleaning the BSL Home units, because obviously that's important right now, sanitizing everything. And then how to return the BSL Home Kits to the school if you're loaning them out to students, how you can advise them to do that, or if you're doing the renting option, how the students can return the kits back to BioPack. So now I'll go over what's in the box. So let me turn on my webcam so you can see me. Hello. So now in front of me, I have a BioPack Student Lab Kit, which comes in a nice box like this. And within that, you'll get everything that your students need to complete all 9 lessons. So they get one package of 100 EL503 electrodes, which are our typical general purpose electrodes. And like you can see, they get 100 of them. There are 9 lessons. So that gives them plenty of time to play around. And we also have this really cool portion at the end of each lesson that's called our active learning segment. And I'll go over that in a little more detail. But that your students can come up with their own hypothesis and test it. So just another reason for them to have some extra electrodes available. We also have EEG lessons. And so for those of you who are familiar with recording EEG, you know, you part your hair and put the electrodes on there. We also include Coban wraps so that your students can have those secure as we advise in the lesson. And then inside your kit, we also have a general purpose lead set, which plugs into the device. You see here, and all of our labels have these helpful illustrations on them that mark the signal. So here is our data acquisition device, the main unit, the MP41. And you can see on the top here, we have an illustration for the different signals we can record, like ECG, EOG, EMG, respiration, and EEG. Other than that, what's in the box are, we have these neat little stickers. You can see it says hashtag BioPack saves the lab. So those are available for your students. They can put them on water bottles or anything fun like they like to do. And then the device uses a 9-volt battery, and that's also included in the kit. So that's about everything you get with your BSL Home Kit. It's all packed securely in there, and is very easy just to ship and receive and return. So after the students receive their BSL Home Kit, the next step is to obviously install the software. So if you're an instructor who has just decided to get BSL Home for your course, you will receive 2 emails from your account manager. And the first email is specific for you, and that's important, and that will say it very clearly in the subject line. It says instructor only. And why that's so important is because that email also includes the answer guide for all of our pre-made data reports. So obviously you do not want to share that email with the student. That email will also say that your account manager will send you a second email momentarily, and that email is intended for your students. And that will have all of the same links and resources that your instructor email included, except it won't have the answer guide. For the student email, it's very easy because you can just copy and paste that and send that to your email group with your class, or just forward it to that group. So now we're going to stop for a quick video. Getting started is to check your email for the BSL Home download. So the first step is getting the email like I shared, where you're going to download and unzip the installation file from either the instructor or the student email. And then there's the startup wizard that comes up and it walks you through step by step through the installation process, which will take approximately 2 minutes to complete the installation. After it tells you that the installation is successful, you'll be prompted to our website, which you can register the device. You'll also need to select your country's line frequency, and then just connect BSL Home to your computer via USB and select the lesson to get started. Okay, so once you have the software installed and you have the device plugged in, you're ready to pick one of our 9 lessons to run. So now I'll briefly describe each of the lessons available. So we have 2 different lessons on EMG, and the first one's investigating the properties of skeletal muscle. And the students record and analyze raw and integrated EMG signals associated with the maximal punch strength for dominant and non-dominant hands. The lesson objectives for this are to observe and record skeletal muscle tonus as reflected by a basal level of electrical activity associated with the muscle in the resting state. And they're also recording the maximum clench strength for the right and left hands, and observing, recording, and correlating that to the motor unit recruitment with increased power of the skeletal muscle contraction. In EMG2, they also examine motor unit recruitment and skeletal muscle fatigue, but in this they use hand weights or household items as a known force. So in this, students are examining the level of motor unit recruitment associated with that applied force from the household items available. And like I mentioned, we wanted to streamline this for students who are going to be using it essentially anywhere. So our instructions have suggestions for using weights, but also if your students don't have weights available, we have suggestions where they can fill up water bottles to known weights, put them in a bucket, or other things that you can do with any common household object. So the lesson objectives for this are to record the EMG response in response to those increased weights on the dominant and non-dominant arms, compare those along with differences between any male and female students in the class, and once again correlate this with the motor unit recruitment, but by increased mechanical work by skeletal muscle. And they'll also record EMG and have a calculated integrated EMG channel, which they look at to induce fatigue. So we also have two lessons that look at EEG, and the first lesson examines how alpha, beta, delta, and theta rhythms vary in the occipital lobe while performing different tasks. So here they're recording EEG while awake and resting with eyes open and eyes closed. And they're examining the waveforms that are alpha, beta, delta, and theta components of the EEG complex. In the second EEG lesson, students explore how the brain receives, integrates, and processes sensory information by examining the raw alpha wave and alpha RMS activity from the occipital lobe while completing different tasks. So the different tasks they perform in this lesson are, one is they're relaxed with their eyes closed, and the second, they're performing mental arithmetic with their eyes closed, they hyperventilate, and lastly, relax with eyes open. And then by looking at these different recording segments, they can examine differences in the level of alpha rhythm activity during mental arithmetic and hyperventilation compared to the control condition where they have their eyes closed and they're relaxed. So ECG is the lesson that we'll be running today. And like I mentioned, this is one of the most popular lessons that every lab will nearly run at one time or another. And this lesson is so popular because it introduces the basics of the heart's electrical signals. It uses a lead to ECG recording, and students correlate the electrical events of the ECG, so the P, Q, R, S, and T components, with the mechanical events of the cardiac cycle. Students also perform tasks designed to promote changes in their own ECG complex and analyze the results. So in this, they become familiar with using the ECG as a primary tool for evaluating electrical events within the heart. And they're also correlating those events to the mechanical events occurring in the cardiac cycle. And the different recording segments are observing rate and rhythm changes associated to ECG with different body positions. So the student will lay supine, as you can see on the right, or seated. We also have a respiration lesson with BSL Home, which is very special for these times because it actually doesn't, include any gas exchange. It's a respiratory lesson based on the intercostal EMG signal between the 8th and 9th ribs, as you can see in this image here. So students will place electrodes here. There's no need for them to use a pneumotac or any breathing type of apparatus. And they can examine the changes in the respiratory minute volume by recording that EMG signal from the thorax. And they'll be doing that while conducting activities associated with voluntarily increasing or decreasing their blood carbon dioxide content. So in this, they are inducing an eupnea or breathing at rest, and they are comparing before, during, and after periods of apnea vera and voluntary apnea to compare those changes to eupnea at the end. And for the EOG lesson, this one's very fun. As you can see on the left, students create a pendulum to examine their horizontal eye movement and fixation by tracking and recording the saccades and fixation on that object. So they're also recording the position of those eye movements. In this lesson, they look at the real versus simulated tracking of a pendulum by first creating a pendulum at home using household items, or if they don't have anything available, we have a lesson that they can watch as well. And then the second part, they will mimic that by simulating the tracking of a horizontal plane and compare how the saccades and fixation vary. In the second part of the lesson, we also incorporate reading and how challenging versus easy reading can affect the saccades and fixation patterns. So in the second part, they read 3 different passages. The first one is they read silently, and that's easy. Then they read a challenging passage silently, and then they read the challenging aloud and can compare their EOG for those different tasks. Now, biofeedback is another really fun lesson, one of my favorites, and it explores, of course, the concept of biofeedback training, popular in psychology, and its effects on the autonomic control of heart rate. So on the screen, like you can see on the right, there's a thermometer style heart rate display, and it rises and falls with changes in the heart rate. So in the first part of this lesson, students are supposed to be conscious of their heart rate and actively increase it or decrease it. And in the second part, it incorporates a little more active learning, and they're asked to pick out their own stimulus. So that could be a YouTube video that would accelerate their heart rate, or reading a passage from a book that would, or something that would bring their heart rate down, like watching a relaxing video of a lakeshore scene or something, you know, of that nature. And then the last lesson is our aerobic exercise physiology lesson. And the students record ECG, and there's a calculation channel for heart rate. And once again, they're looking at how their ECG changes under a variety of activity conditions. So students see how the electrical activity of the heart and their heart rate vary to meet those changing metabolic demands. And this you're using a lead to ECG, and the students will be seated, supine, and they'll also take off their leads to increase their heart rate, and will track recovery. So now we're going to pause for one quick audience poll, and then we can get started with the lesson after that.
Hey, great. Thanks, Jasmine. And your audio sounds wonderful now.
Thank you.
Which lesson would you all teach to your students now that Jasmine's gone over those lessons? Looks like EMG is pretty popular. We'll just give everyone a minute or so to answer those. Now, I know one of the questions that came in is you know, how are portable lessons different? And this is a 1-channel system, right? Versus a 2-channel system is what you would normally have in your lab.
It's a 1-channel system. It doesn't require a power supply. So like your typical MP36s would also need to be plugged into wall power. And as you see, I can turn my webcam back on for our next lesson.
Well, hang on, because we've got the poll up still, so.
Okay, well, I'll show you in a moment. It just requires a USB connection to get started. And I'll bring it up to the screen again so you can see if it just fits in the palm of your hand.
Okay, I just closed the poll, so go ahead and show your webcam now.
Okay. Hello again. So now we can get started with running a BSL lesson, but like I was mentioning, this is the MP41 device. So much smaller in terms of the footprint than your typical MP36s or the 4-channel devices. And it uses a 9-volt battery, and also you just have to plug it in via USB to your laptop. The lessons, as you'll see when we run through them, all of the content was also adapted so that they can be used individually. So if you're familiar with the lessons in the past, the instructions oftentimes were designed for students who are working in a group. And now you could still work in a group, but this is specifically designed, you know, for working at home. You can work independently, you can work physically distanced, you can still be collaborative and share the data with your classmates, as I'll show you. So that's how this has been really redesigned for more individual use. All right, so first thing I want to share with you is on our webpage, and it's a link to all of these really helpful getting started resources. And you'll receive a link to this in that email that you receive from your account manager. It's in the instructor email, and it's also in the student email. And this will bring you to the BSL Home Class Info page. And this has a plethora of helpful resources for when you're getting started. There's a hardware guide that outlines the different components here. So like the different symbols for ECG and EMG, like I was just stating. Also a guide that walks you through installation, as well as the installation video I just shared with all of you. Some troubleshooting guides, and one that I would really emphasize all students to check out before getting started is the BSL Home Quick Guide. This goes over the BSL Home display, the user interface, where the measurement markers are, the I-beam tool, how to zoom, and all the basics that are really helpful when you're getting started with using BSL, especially if it's your first time. Here we also have a video on how to get started with recording a lesson and the cleaning protocol that I'll discuss with you at the end of the webinar. And if your students are more visual learners, and we know many of them are, it's the age of TikTok, you can also advise them to check out our helpful video resources. So if you go on our website here, and you can go to the support tab, you go to video tutorials. And once you're brought up to there, you can go to BSL, BioPack Student Lab. And we have a slew of different tutorials here, accompanied by descriptions that can walk them through. One of the most helpful ones, I would say, it's kind of like a video version of that quick start guide, is the BSL 4 Physiology Lab demo. And this also shows them how to zoom in on the data, how to annotate it, how to run a lesson from start to finish. So we have plenty of resources available to make it really simple for you as the instructor and the students when getting started. All right, so now I'm going to plug in my device so that we can run a lesson just as a student would. So that just requires the USB connection here. So I'm just going to plug this in. And I'm going to go to my startup wizard and just select the BioPack Student Lab program. All right, so once you select BioPack Student Lab from your startup wizard, you'll be brought up to this menu. And so you can see it lists the 9 different lessons that you have to select. I'm going to select ECG1 since that's the one we're going to be doing today. And the first step is to type in your file name. So this is important because it ensures that your students are never going to lose any data, which we know is very important. Whether you're in the lab or at home, that could be frustrating. So before they get started, they're going to type in a unique indicator for that folder, and they can use that for every single lesson, and their data file will automatically be saved to that folder. And each time they're recording during the lesson, it's automatically saving there. So that already exists, which is great. So I can have all of my files in that one central location. So I'm going to say use it. Now it says set the dial to ECG/EOG, press and hold the check pad. Continue to hold until prompted to let go. When the light starts to flash, click check MP41. So this first step is going to establish communication between the hardware and the software. So just like it's saying, I'm going to press and hold the check pad. So this check pad is actually a little button you can feel and press down on. And when I hold it, I have it on the set the dial to ECG/EOG. Now you'll see it's starting to flash. And so the directions say, when the light starts to flash, click check MP41. So it's flashing. I click check MP41. And I'm just going to hold it down for a few minutes, just like it's stated. And now it says, let go of the check pad. When the light stops flashing, click continue. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click continue. And now we're connected. So the hardware and software is talking, we're all good. Now we have these on-screen instructions you can see on the bottom. And these are going to walk me through step by step. But if I'm a good student, of course, hopefully I would have read the protocol before doing the experiment today. And that's available here within the help menu. So students can go open up the lesson introductions, which were all written by Dr. Richard Flanzer from Purdue. And these describe, the objectives that are going to be covered in the lesson. So just like we discussed earlier, this is going to be looking at the electrical events, and you're correlating them to the mechanical events of the cardiac cycle. There's also this chart here that has each ECG component described and the typical duration for that. So in the analysis, the students can go back, take measurements of their own and compare. And this discusses the effects of the resting respiratory cycle on heart rate. And then we also have protocols for the recording and analysis procedures as well. So you can go to open the lesson procedures here. And we have the objectives, the materials laid out like any standard operating procedure. And then you also see that the protocol is divided into 2 columns. So we have the fast track setup and the detailed explanation. So the fast track setup kind of mimics the on-screen instructions that you see on the bottom here. And the detailed explanation talks about everything you might need to know. So if you ever find yourself stumbling or found, oh, my data's a little messy, you can go back to this and it says, oh, did you remember to clean and abrade your skin? But it has that extra level of detail to help guide you. After students run, 1 or 2 lessons, typically they kind of stick to the fast track, and that's all they need to do to run the lesson. For the analysis, we also have a protocol for that. So each lesson is accompanied by a pre-made data report, and the students can fill that out. And we also have a protocol that assists them for extracting all of the measurements required for all these tables. So you can see we have like a table labeled table A, B, and C. Now if I scoot back up here to the protocol, you can see these icons for table B, table C, and it has directions that guide your students through extracting that measurement. So here it states, use the I-beam cursor to select the segments on that ECG wave, take the manual measurement and of the amplitude and put that in the data report. So it really walks students step by step so they can complete the recording and the lesson and the data report with minimal supervision, especially if they're doing remote learning. And like I mentioned, at the very end of each of these lessons, we have this active learning portion, which is really fun because it gives your students some room to play around. In the active learning portion, they're encouraged to come up with their own hypothesis using the tools that they have at hand. So in this case, it would be the ECG electrodes. And they can write an outline for the experiments that they would like to create and test that at the end of the lesson. So, if I was an A+ student, hopefully I went through the protocol and I'm all prepared to get started. But even if not, we have these super helpful on-screen instructions, and you'll see they'll guide me through step by step. So here, I clicked the subject tab, and it says, apply electrodes to clean skin, i.e. lotions, makeup, and any other skin product should be removed. So I'm set on that. And then attach 3 electrodes and clip leads in a lead 2 setup. And so you can see we have images here, and we have the VIN- on the right wrist, and we have ground and VIN+ on both ankles. And so it says attach those clip leads. So I'm going to do that and then lay down relaxed in the supine position. Now for our purposes, I'm not going to lay down. So I have the webcam on, but you can see if you were working by yourself, you would lay down just like the subject is on the instructions there. So she has her laptop next to her and the device by her side. So it's really simple for her to complete that recording. Okay. Clipping on the leads really quick. Okay, so now it says prepare for signal check. Remain supine and relaxed with eyes closed and wait for signal check to stop. Great, okay. So verify signal check recording, it says in the first bullet. So now we have this example data that I can compare against. That looks good. If it didn't match, I can go ahead and redo the signal check. What the signal check does is it's basically the calibration. And from now on, it's going to have the vertical scale adjusted to my unique ECG signal. So it's visually it's displayed very easy for me to read. So next, we're going to do the supine recording, where you're going to lay down, relax in the supine position. It says remain still with eyes closed and click task to recording steps. There's also these helpful notes that will guide your students. So it says it helps to be within reach of a computer so that you can easily start the recording. If that is not possible, it is recommended to start the recording before adopting the supine position. Be sure to allow extra time to acquire at least 20 seconds of good uninterrupted supine data. So just like in the last recording, it will work out perfectly well for the student working on their own as long as they can bring their laptop and MP41 next to them. But even if they have a desktop computer, we have suggestions in there that the key is that they can acquire at least 20 seconds of uninterrupted data. So even if it takes them a moment or two to get on the ground from their computer station. So here we go for the supine recording. We'll remain supine, relaxed with eyes closed, and record for 20 seconds. Yep, and I think I unclipped one of my clip leads there. Unfortunately, just a sec.
Well, that's fun to see what kind of craziness can happen with data.
So that would be an example of when you want to redo. So I can compare against my sample data here, and it doesn't match. So let's redo that. Make sure all my clip leads are in here, and I have wires with my speakers on. So just a moment. I think some wires are tangled. All right, so I think I have everything untangled now and clipped in properly. So let's try this again. Thank you for your patience. All right, so now that's looking a lot better, what we would expect. You can see those defined R peaks. And so, like I said, the first segment for the calibration, it's going to take your individual ECG waveform and scale the vertical to that. So now you can see my signal is a little more zoomed in than in the first recording segment. So that looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next recording segment that's well speeded. And after 20 seconds, I can go ahead and click suspend. And once again, I can compare against the sample data. If I wanted to redo this, I could go ahead and click redo, but for our purposes, I'll go ahead and click continue. So next we're going to be doing the deep breathing recording. So it says first verify the previous segment data, check, we've done that. Remain seated, relaxed, and still, and click task to record to review the recording steps. Now it says, remain seated next to the computer and inhale and exhale as completely as possible for 5 prolonged, deep, slow breath cycles. And I'll press F9 at the start of each inhale and at the start of each exhale because I'm on a Windows, or you'd use Escape on your Mac, just like it states on the left side here. So you repeat to record 5 complete prolonged breath cycles. We also have these videos embedded in the software that show the student how they can do this. So you can see, you would just make sure you're stationed next to your laptop with your hand already positioned over the marker. And we have one of those other helpful notes here as well that says, it is recommended that you keep your free hand near the keyboard to insert required event markers. And a second person may also assist. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and press Escape or F9 every time I inhale and exhale. Okay, so then we can look at the example data. I could redo it if I wanted to. I think I moved a little bit on that one. So if I was a student, I'd probably redo it once more. We have the event markers that came in, and it looks good. So here we can go to the after exercise recording, unclip the electrode leads, and exercise to elevate the heart rate. So let's watch this quick video to see how it's prescribed here. So you can see she unclipped. Now she's doing something to elevate her heart rate, like some jumping jacks. And after exercising, you just need to reclip those leads. So you can imagine if I took these off, I was going to do jumping jacks or something like you just saw. Next, I'm going to reclip them in the proper position and recover from exercise while seated for 60 seconds. Let me just let this run. We won't have to do a whole 60-second recording for our purposes, but you can see my ECG there. Awesome. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click suspend. And for this last part now, it says examine the data, and we're all good. So I can go ahead and click done. And it says, are you sure? Have you finished all the recording segments? Choosing yes will automatically save the file. So I'll go ahead and select yes. Now from here, you can record from another subject. You can analyze the current data file or analyze another data file. So for our purposes, I will go and analyze our current data file, but I also want to pause for one more quick audience poll before we get into the analysis routine.
All right, thanks, Jasmine. I'm going to launch the poll, and Bob, I know you've been waiting a while with your questions. So Jasmine, is it possible to use the data acquisition for protocols that are not part of the lesson?
I'm not sure I'm understanding the question clearly, but let me take my best stab at it. So yeah, are you wanting to use the lesson, but for your own protocol, but record ECG and kind of your own kind of procedure tied to it?
I'm guessing that that's what he wants. Bob, go ahead and clarify and send me a message. But yes, that's how I interpreted that. Yes, that's what he agrees. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So I can jump back because I sort of skimmed over this, I realized. But
okay,
at
well,
the end of each lesson,
hang on a second, the poll is still up. So it looks like we've got most people. All right, here, I'll close the poll. Okay, now you can jump back.
Okay, well, at the end of each lesson, there's an active learning portion. So instead of selecting analyze the data, I could have hit resume, and that was like the open-ended active learning framework we talked about. So students can come up with their own hypothesis using their own equipment at hand, and they just have that open screen and it will run data for as long as they want. So you can collect your own data there. I know we do have some instructors who are using BSL Home and who are planning to use it in that way. So they'll have their students do like the typical ECG lesson, or maybe they'll do biofeedback, which also looks like at ECG, but they want to also incorporate a segment about heart rate variability. So in that active learning portion, you can have your students follow any protocol that you want, and it's just like an open-ended segment. So you can cover any topic you want right there. So let me know if you have any other questions on that.
Yep. Thanks so much.
All right. So now that I selected to analyze my data, you can see the data I collected on myself here. We have the heart rate channel on the top, and we have the raw ECG. Now, if I was the student, I would go to the lesson procedure, and there I have that data report that was pre-made. And I can just go through there and correlate that with the instructions here that will guide me through selecting the I-beam cursor, selecting that area, and extracting the right measurements. So here on the right hand, you can see these are those main tools. You have your typical cursor, your I-beam cursor, the zoom, and also your annotation tool. So your students can select, let me first zoom in on some ECG data here. So there's some good ECG data. And let's say I want to just go from the R to R peak. So I can take my I-beam cursor and select. And then they have 5 different manual measurements that they can take here. So there's 2 parts of these manual measurements. And the first is what channel are they taking the measurement from? So right now, I want to look at the R to R peak on the raw ECG. So I can have ECG selected. And let's say I want to look at delta T. So the next tab in the drop-down menu, you can see the slew of different measurements we have. So in different lessons, students will be required to take the peak to peak, the max, the min, the need, the beats per minute. But we have instructions that guide them through that step by step. So I'll just select delta T so that you can see. And let's say if I also wanted to make a measurement on right above, I can change that and select right now and have that. We also have this journal menu below, and this is a nice place for your students to work in as they're assessing the data. So you can take measurements and copy and paste them directly into the journal. And paste graph images. So I just had that segment selected. So now I was able to copy and paste that directly into my journal. And this is all perfectly compatible with Word too. So if you want to copy and paste this into Word, you can easily do that, or Excel, any of those Microsoft or OpenOffice programs. So now I would like to discuss sharing the data between BSL Home. So we know a lot of the students aren't going to be able to work in the lab like they typically were, but it doesn't inhibit their way to collaborate. So once they've have their data analyzed, they can easily go to the File menu and save as. Now there's a few different options for this. First, they're going to select, of course, whatever file. And the inherent file type for BioPack Student Lab is a .acq file, just like in the past. So they can share those files together and open them and analyze each other's data. Now, some of you also may have used the Pro side of our software before as well. So now that I've shown the basics of how to kind of analyze the data along with the lesson guide and how to share it, I'm going to unplug and show you how to access some of those Pro features quickly in case that's of interest to you as well. So I can quit out of BioPack Student Lab now because I've saved my data. Let's say I sent it to my students or my classmates. And maybe I'm in more of an advanced class, so my teacher also wants me to do some heart rate variability analysis. So I can unplug my device now, go back to BioPack Student Lab, and this is how your students can access some of those Pro tools. So that's within our Analyze Only mode, and when they go in there, they can open a graph file. So I'm going to open the one that I just recorded with all of you. And once I have that graph file open now, you can see my journal is saved. It has that image that I just copied and pasted in there. I can do even more analysis, and I can do analysis even, if I don't have my device handy. So here are the familiar menus from Pro, where you have your transformation menu with some of these more advanced features like digital filters, math functions, integrating, smoothing. And the popular analysis menu with more of the advanced analysis tools like power spectral density, FFT, fine cycle, heart rate variability, and waterfall plot, to name a few. So there's different ways to access both of that. But of course, with BSL Home, you want it to be as streamlined and easy to use as possible with your students. So when just running through those lessons, you're just shown, the simple cursors and measurement tools that you're needed to extract the measurement for that data report. But there are also the advanced tools here behind the scenes. So I wanted to share that with you all quickly. Brenda, were there any other questions on software or lessons that I can share while I have it up? Otherwise, I'm going to jump into how to learn or how to return and clean the system.
No, I think we're good. You've explained it really well. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, if anything comes up, just let me know. So I'm going to hop back to the PowerPoint now. Just a second. All right. So there's two different ways to get BSL Home Kits, and that's either by renting them or your school might be purchasing them. And so if your school's purchasing them, you might be sending them out to your students to use and expecting them to ship it back to you so that you can send them to the next cohort. And similar, if you're renting from BioPack, you can choose to have the school handle the shipment process, or BioPack can also handle the logistics for you and ship the kits from BioPack to the home, and then the student would have a return label that they would put on the top of the box and return back to BioPack. But basically, the boxes that the units come in are designed to be shipped and can be shipped multiple times. So like you can see, we have this little insert that snugly keeps the MP41 device right in there. So just remind your students to keep the BSL Home Kits because you can use those to store the devices moving forward and shipping and returning between students as well. And because, of COVID-19, of course, sanitizing is even more important now in labs than per se ever. So we also have a cleaning protocol that's available on that class home info page that you receive a link to in the email, but I also wanted just to outline it with you quickly. So BSL Home is a small device, so of course there's nooks and crannies. So using any type of 70% bleach type of concentrate or mixture to clean this, similar to a Clorox wipe, is fine. You can follow those standard CDC guidelines, and we also mentioned that in the protocol guide. The first step is to use one of those substances and wipe the complete surface of that unit. And so that means the front, the back, there's a little belt clip. So getting that, the knob, and the sides. You also want to make sure to wipe down the USB cable, and don't forget any connectors as well, like you can see here. So the electrode lead connector should also be cleaned, and then the wires, the white, the red, and the black ones. The devices also include a battery, so it's very easy just to check to see if that battery is still available or still has juice in it. If it's ran out, you won't get the flashing light on your device, and so you can just simply replace that with another disposable or rechargeable 9-volt battery. Okay, so that's kind of wrapping up our webinar today, but we're going to have one more audience poll. Brenda?
Great. Yes, I just launched the poll. Let us know what solution you have in your lab. We're curious to hear from you. Lots of great data coming in. So I know a few people asked about pricing. Jasmine, is that something you can address now? I know you can't give prices because it depends on the quantity and everything, but how do they get pricing information?
Yeah, so we'll have account managers reach out if you would like some pricing information after the webinar. It does vary on the specifics for your class. So we came up with a really flexible pricing structure dependent on class size and what your needs are so that we could have solutions for different scenarios and different budgets. So it's hard to give a specific quote without knowing more, but we'll make sure that the account manager can get in touch with you.
Great, and I will also show where they can reach out to their account manager. Did you have any other slides that you wanted to share? Any other comments?
Yeah, there was one more. So we have a really fun contest coming up that I'd like to share with everyone. And we're kind of calling it Say BSL Home, like say cheese. But this is using Instagram. Like we know many of your students probably already use that social media platform and have fun with it and post selfies on there. Well, now they have a chance to post with their BSL Home Kit and have the chance to win a $50 Amazon gift card. But there's also something in there for you as the instructor. So each month, our marketing team will go through our Instagram and pick a winner, a winning student, and they'll get a $50 Amazon gift card. And at the end of the school year, before 2021 starts, we'll go through and pick the ultimate winner, and that instructor will also win the BSL Home Kit. So we have rules for that on our website, so find out more. And we encourage your students to post a selfie with their BSL homes, and good luck with winning.
Okay, thanks so much. I am going to take over the screen. And I wanted to just share with you all that if you do need to reach out to your salesperson, you can go to our website, biopack.com, click contact us and fill out that form. Or you can go to scroll all the way down to your local salesperson. Mine is Amy Walker because I'm in California, but yours is going to be different depending on what region you're in. And you can just simply fill out this form and they'll get a message right away. So I wanted to share that. I also wanted to let you know that we have webinars on demand on our website. We have over, I'll actually show them to you because there's so many. We have over 40 webinars on our website, and 3 or 4 of them are related to education. So lots of great information here about different best practices for collecting signals, for getting good data. You can see the major signals are all noted there. We've got emerging technologies. So lots of great content there for you to peruse. Our next webinar is September 17th. It's going to be dealing with media psychophysiology and understanding the cognitive and behavioral decision-making, a model for understanding how you can do research in that area. So you can keep an eye on our webinars page and then register for live webinars, and then also go back and review ones that we've hosted in the past. Thank you so much, Jasmine, for everything that you've done. That was a great presentation and a great demos too. I loved how the clips came off and you had to redo that section because that's totally something that would happen. That's totally something that would happen to a student. So thank you for your time and putting that information together for us. Today's webinar was recorded, and we'll email you a link to the recording, the slides, and the Q&A document. You may visit biopack.com for additional references, including screencasts on specific features and analysis tools. There's a lot of great videos on BSL specifically. There's application notes providing step-by-step instructions, and then of course information about our events, both live and virtual. And we miss seeing you all. We look forward to the day that we could meet up in person again. Jasmine, anything else before we conclude?
No, that's all on my end. Thank you, and good luck everyone with the new normal.
Yeah, reach out to us anytime you'd like. We're here for you. We're here to talk through strategies while we all figure this out. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you again. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you all for participating. Have a great rest of your day and stay safe.